I'm good. I'm good.
Good. So I had you do this life map. I'm taking a look at it. Great job, by the way.
All my pictures.
Yes, I like all your little graphics. You did good.
Oh, yes.
So you want to tell me a little bit about what all this means?
Okay. So the spiritual life map I thought was an interesting assignment just because it said to kind of doodle, and I'm not great at doodling. So it was difficult, but I got to use Pinterest, so that was a good little area there to kind of use for these symbols. Um,
Resourceful.
so we can just start from the top. The first symbol is the picture of the little house. So I grew up in a home with two Christian parents, and just it was a very different kind of Christian home, though. It was the kind you come home to and you don't talk about what you learn in church. You just kind of, it's understood that, you believe in God. So it was a very weird dynamic. So my parents, whenever they were asked, um, what are you learning in your small group? They'd always just be like, oh, we're just like reading the Bible. And they wouldn't really have any real in depth answers to say. Or whenever I'd ask questions about my faith, they'd kind of refer me to something else. Except for my mom. My mom would open up a little bit about that, but my dad was very closed off. So we didn't really have much of a relationship. Even though he was in the home, he was just really absent from my life. Just lots of important events and stuff like that. He just wasn't a part of. But so we started going to this church when I got a little older. That's the next little thing, with a little steeple and the cross at the top. So we started going to this church. We had moved around a lot, but yet we still were kind of in the same area as this church. And I was really young. My sisters are a little bit older. They were 9 and 11 when I was born. So I was kind of like oh, look, there's one more. So
Nice.
yeah, so when I was like old enough to, talk and really understand anything, they were like in high school and college. So I didn't really have a very strong relationship with them until I got, married and grew up, and they kind of had something to talk to me about. So,
Right, you
um,
could relate.
yeah, so it was just a lot with that. I wanted that relationship with them, and I wanted that relationship with my dad. And it seemed like my only one that I had was with my mom, and she just was full time mom. My dad was in and out of jobs all the time. Like he was, new jobs probably like every 2 years or so. Just really unhappy with the fact that he couldn't provide for our family, and he didn't realize that he was providing in other ways and could provide in other ways as far as picking up groceries or doing stuff around the home. But it really just weighed on him that he couldn't. And my mom was just being more and more successful in her job, and really just being like our sole like breadwinner, I think. And so that really like put him into a depression. So even though we were going to this church, it was still just like okay, we'll go to church on Sunday, but nothing really past that. We didn't really ever talk about it. I mean, we prayed before meals sometimes.
So it was more mechanical, like this is just what we do because we're Christians.
Yeah. And like never family dinners. Like we always ate in separate rooms. My sisters, didn't want really anything to do with me. They kind of resented me because they thought, my mom was done. And so that was just kind of hard. Like, we were all in the same home and we all lived there, but it was just so much tension all the time. And so it was really cool when I found my friend Allie. So she's the little jump rope girl in the picture. She was kind of my little guide there in the middle of it. She was someone I could talk to about God. She's someone that I just had a really good relationship with growing up, and she kind of helped me through a lot of that. And we're still friends to this day, so that's really cool. But God really knew what I needed in that moment and gave me her. And she was that friend, and her family. I mean, just I wish my family was that way. And it was one of the things I had to just kind of rely on them for. And I mean, it helped that we were literally 5 minutes apart from each other, distance wise. So that was really cool. Just having her as along a part of that, just because my family, I mean, for years, we have an okay relationship now, but just all through this process, elementary school, middle school, high school, it was just very strained. So we left the church where I had met my friend, and we had gone to another church to start a church plant. And it was really hard because my friend, didn't really understand and was kind of mad that I left. And so, that relationship kind of tore apart for a few years just because she didn't understand why we had to leave. And so that part was really hard, leaving your one friend that you felt like you could console in and be a part of. But and then we only ended up staying at that church plant for a few years. And then when I had the chance, I went to a different church where I felt like I was growing. I went all the way up through, I think, like the middle of middle school. And I really just wasn't learning. I mean, church would barely crack a Bible during the service. And it's like, if you're not preaching God's word, why am I here? And she just didn't get that. She just, was part of the emotions. And just, I think as we got older in middle school, like it was uncool to kind of, read God's word because it's an outdated book and whatever excuse she made up. But so that part was really, really hard because I was going to church by myself. My parents were kind of burned by that church when they were going. So I had to just have them take me every day for almost a year and a half. And I just sat by myself and didn't really, that church, I'm a part of that now, but it's going through a lot of changes. And it was completely different church back then. There wasn't a whole lot of people being welcome, but I loved the service and I loved the music. And I just really wanted to be a part of that. I was a new Christian. I had just come back from a summer camp where I'd given my life to Christ, and I really wanted to grow that relationship, and I just wasn't at this other church. So
yeah, that's what I was going to say. It sounds like you were just really hungry for the Lord and for the things of God, and that just drove you to, push to get there. That's awesome. As a young girl like that, that's great.
Yeah, it was definitely really hard. There were a lot of days I wanted to quit. There were a lot of days I just wanted to, stop going to church because that's what, my parents were doing. And I looked to them for guidance and for, wisdom and how to live my life. And when that wasn't happening, it just became like just a hard season for me because I'm like, well, why, I see all these other families in our church and why can't my parents, grow me in that way? But it was one of the things the Lord had to humble me through. He's like, I'm not done with you yet. There's so much left of your story that we have to do and you just need to be patient. So, the next part that I have is when I was in high school. So I was still going to this church. I had started hanging out with some friends. I had really gotten, I think, in a good place with just growing in my faith, and I felt like I was doing okay. And then I met this guy when I was in high school, and I don't know why, but I was just really determined to pursue him instead of letting him pursue me, which ended up ultimately failing. But we dated for about off and on for like 3.5 years, during high school, yeah, during college. But all the while, I mean, he was subtly doing things I didn't realize were detrimental until I had to talk to somebody about it later. And they were like, wait, he did what? Just very verbally emotional things, I guess you could say. Just telling me that he wanted to just stay with me until he found, his wife or someone, better that he was suited for. I was kind of like his to tide you over when you're super hungry, but you can't eat a meal yet. Basically that kind of thing. Yeah. And just wanted to be super physical all the time. And I was never comfortable with it. And his family had kind of rejected me because they're Mennonite and they just didn't like me, I guess. They wanted him to marry a Mennonite girl. And so I never thought that was going to be an issue until we got, older. And I was like, when I get out of college, we had started college and we were still dating. And I just saw that there was no fruit to that relationship. And then I was still, practically in love with him because apart from, I was so and twisted with what was going on. I lost sight of what God was trying to do in my life. I didn't really ask him what do you want to do with this? So he broke up with me. I think it was a few days after my birthday. Had me over. We hung out with his family all day, and then we sat on his couch, and then he just broke up with me, and I was devastated. I remember not eating for a couple of weeks and just going through a really rough time because I was like, I know this wasn't right, but I was so intertwined and so caught up in that relationship that I couldn't see past it. And in my own distorted mind, I'd created this whole life for us, but I never saw it being a happy one. But it was just, I didn't feel like I was worth more than what he could give. And so that kind of played into that. So that was really hard for a couple of years. I kind of waited, we were back and forth. I mean, he had broken up with me, but he was still hanging out with me. And, I mean, it was just a big mess for years and years. And during that, I really lost sight of what I wanted to do. And, I really got in with a bad couple of years, just going to clubs and drinking and smoking. And, so that was a really hard time. I was, just trying to fill what I felt like he was feeling at the time. And, I just felt completely empty and I didn't really know what to do. So I don't remember the time. I just remember getting down on my knees in my bedroom and really just asking God. I'm like, I know this is not what you want for me. I had come back from a weekend where I had gotten so drunk that I didn't know where I was. And I remember waking up and my friend said, oh, yeah, I protected you. This guy was on top of you, but I got him off of you. And so I just kind of woke up, kind of coming back in pieces what was going on in my life. And I just remember getting up and being like, God, like, this is not what you want for me. And I felt sick to my stomach and I really tried to live differently. I didn't hang out with those friends. I really just started getting on my knees and praying all the time. I think that was probably my strongest prayer season I had in my life. Definitely want to get back to that, but man, it was just really hard. So I really wanted to ask God, part of it was I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I was going to college, but I didn't really have a purpose. So I got to about my junior year and my mom was like, what about Liberty? My sister had gone there and I was always really interested in social work. I just didn't know how to do it. And she got me plugged in there and I started attending there and just trying to get the classes underway, I guess. So I had finished I'd gone to a community college and I finished and I went to we have this thing called Chi Alpha at our church. It's basically like a choir that sings and dances, but goes to different halfway houses, women's shelters, prisons, all kinds of things just to kind of minister to them and hang out with them for a week. And there was this guy on the trip that played the bass. And he showed a very awesome interest in me, and it was crazy because it happened in a span of a week. Asked for my number, was asking me about my life, and just really interested in me. And I was like, God, I just already told you, I'm done with men. You saw what happened last time. I'm not even looking for this. So I started going to LU, and then at the end of that month, he had proposed. So
Wow.
we got engaged and it was just crazy how that worked. I was praying so much through. I was like, God, I literally want you to take him away from me if this is not what you want. Because I've been burned before and I wasn't in your will before, but I want to be now. So, I mean, he's really just an answer to prayer. I really didn't feel like I was ever supposed to get married. I thought I was supposed to be single for the rest of my life. And I was really praying through that because that was going to be really hard for me to be single forever.
I can relate.
Yeah. So I don't know how God's grace worked there, but it did. And he proposed, and then we were married 6 months later. And it was just crazy to see how God worked through all of that. I mean, I had not asked for it, and he just really pursued me through the whole time. And I mean, it's just more than I ever could have imagined. I mean, and now he's a worship pastor at our church. We started a new church plant. That's where we are now. We started dating when that was going on. And so now he's their worship pastor there and plays all the instruments and sings. And I mean, it's just a total stud, and I totally don't deserve him. And God's just been super faithful through my life. I went through bad relationships, but it helped me to know, what I didn't want and what I needed to look for. And just those feelings of unworthiness from my parents and just that lack of love that I was getting at home. My family's working through that now and they're going through all of that. But it definitely took a long time. And it's only been in the past probably like 5 years or so that my parents have actually like started going to church again. And, my sisters actually want to talk to me on a daily basis. So that's kind of nice. But yeah, it's definitely been a long journey.
Right. It really sounds like the Lord is doing a redemptive work in your life. Not only through your relationship with your new husband, but also in your family, and just that he's just restoring and healing the things of the past. So, wow, it's great to hear. It's great to see how God worked through your life like that.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your life map with me.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
Yeah. Well, we should probably end today, but I look forward to our next visit.
Yeah. Same here.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.